We've spent a lot of time talking about VMUGs and community involvement, but believe it or not, there are other groups out there. Today we look into IT meetups and developing user groups. Hello, and welcome to the ExploreVM podcast. My guest today comes to us from the great state of Texas. Nick, why don't you tell us about yourself?
Hey, Paul. My name is Nick Korte. I do live in the great state of Texas where everything's bigger, or so they say. I'm actually someone who came into IT, I guess you'd call it happenstance, not the traditional path. I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up, and so I ended up majoring in math and minoring in computer science in college and got a job as a substitute high school math teacher and ended up teaching math for 3.5 years and kind of made the jump to analyst and SQL guy at a defined benefits organization. And then I got a call from a company that I was doing some consulting work with on some laser time estimations for their manufacturing plant. And they wanted me to come and be part analyst, part IT pro. And that was in 2007. And so it actually morphed into full-time IT, working on servers, working on help desk. And it was a great experience. And then just this last December, I got a different job actually over in Dallas, so it's a little bit more of a drive, but I'm working more with VMware every day, a little bit more advanced versions like Enterprise Plus, and it's just been a very great experience. So many things I've learned, and like many people say, I'm still staying more of a generalist than any kind of specialist.
Now, you reached out to me after hearing my some of my previous recordings. And you said, you know what, I'm with Spice Corps. We don't really focus on just virtualization. We're more of a general technology group. So why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about Spice Corps? What does your group do? How are the meetings structured? That kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, Spice Corps, the whole idea goes back to this conference called Spice World. And it was put on by a company called Spiceworks. And they give their software away for free. And they make money by small advertisements inside the software. And so they started giving the software away for free, I believe, in 2006. And a lot of people started using it for help desk ticketing and purchasing and scanning items into inventory. And they decided to have a user group conference in 2008 down in Austin. And the marketing director that planned this, she wasn't sure how many people would show up. And people that used the software showed up, and they had vendor sponsorship and a lot of good sessions, and so they decided to do this year after year, and it still goes on today, this October, actually. And what happened was the people that got to meet each other at Spice World, they didn't want to stop interacting just at Spice World. They wanted to talk to each other maybe in their local area, talk to other Spiceworks users. How are they using the product? What are they doing to make their environment better and become more efficient? And so the whole idea of Spice Core was born. And I think in the beginning, they started focusing on the Spiceworks product because that's what everybody had in common. But it actually morphed into more of a generalist type community. And, you can go online today and go to the Spiceworks community, community.spiceworks.com, and you'll find forums in just about any major IT discipline. And it really was built for the generalist. So at our Spice Core meetings, we generally do have a vendor sponsor. Not always, but sometimes we do. And we actually have the meetings probably on a Tuesday or a Thursday evening for maybe 2-3 hours. We'll have a vendor buy us some food and beverage and allow them to give a technical talk. But, it's not just come and give us your sales pitch and don't tell us anything nerdy that we like to hear. It's come and talk to us about the problem, whatever it is you're selling solves, some use cases, some technical details about what it does, and let us pick your brain. Don't bring the sales guy only, bring the technical sales engineer too. And so we'll let them give a talk for, say, 30, 45 minutes, ask some good questions, pick their brains, and then we'll just talk to each other about what we're doing or what we may be learning, something exciting that someone did in their environment. And, we try to encourage people to give a technical talk at the meetings as well. Sometimes that works out, sometimes it doesn't. That's a little bit different than a VMUG, right, Paul?
Well, yes and no. With the VMUGs, there is obviously a lot of vendor involvement. They do get their sessions. That's where VMUG gets its funding, is the vendors sponsoring and paying for their time slots in that table. And you do find there are some vendors that just send you the sales guy and their sessions aren't that great. Then there's other vendors who make great technical content. But there's been a big push in the last couple of years with the VMUG meetings for community sessions. I have presented several community sessions all across Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana. Yeah, that's about right. Um, so yeah, we're in a big push. I say we. I'm just a member. I'm not on a steering committee anymore. I'm not a leader, but I'm heavily involved, and I really want to see things succeed, and I want to help drive good content. But yeah,
Oh yeah.
absolutely been a big push to get people out there and be involved.
Yeah, that seems to be a hard thing sometimes. Not everybody wants to put themselves out there. I work with one other gentleman to co-coordinate the Spice Corps, and I'll tell you that I completely agree with what you said, the push for community content, because some of the best sessions, the most well-attended sessions we've had have been somebody just telling us about something they did in their environment. And it could be something as simple as, you know what, I had this really big problem with my Wi-Fi, and here's what I did to fix it. And I remember that meeting specifically because we took that back to our company and we were able to use the tips that this guy gave us to fix our Wi-Fi because it was very good. And it's, in my opinion, it's always better than what the vendor is coming to tell you. Not that they're not giving you helpful and useful information, but to talk to someone who's used this product or done this thing, it just puts them on a level that you have so much more in common with them than you do with this vendor representative. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's value in hearing how you have fixed a problem. My session this year that I've done at a few different VMUGs is free tools for assessing the health of your environment. And my room is packed. And honestly, it's stuff that I'm a little bit surprised more people don't use or know about. But I've received a lot of positive feedback. Like, I'll go out there and I'll say, this is the tool, and this is how I used it, and this is what it's done for me. And people will come up afterwards like, thank you, like, I'm really going to go do this now. And when VMUG has provided me my session feedback, there's a lot of comments about, great examples on how this is actually used in real life. So yeah, there's absolutely there's a tremendous amount of value in sharing your story in what you've done versus, yeah, I mean, it's nice when a vendor can bring a client with them and explain how their product helped them, which is awesome. I encourage that. I like that better than our product will save you X amount of dollars over the next 3 years, or this is why our storage is faster. It's getting to the point that people don't want to hear that. It's more, if you can tell me why your product is better and with an example, that's what I want to hear. A lot of these people have been going to a lot of meetings for a long time, and they've heard it all. They've seen it all from these vendors. We need to know how your product works and how you're going to help make our lives better.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And that's echoed in the Spice Corps as well. And much like VMUG, they're free to attend, and we generally have a decent turnout. I would say it could be anywhere from 10 to maybe 35 people. I think that's probably the most we've ever had because we normally have it on a weekday night. It's not normally an all day thing, kind of like the VMUGs are. I mean, I'd love to get to that point, but we're definitely not there yet.
Now, you mentioned that you work with another leader out of your group. What encouraged you or what inspired you to take that step from attendee to leader?
It's kind of funny how that happened. So in Dallas Fort Worth, there was a gentleman named Scott Allen Miller he was kind of the coordinator of the Spice Corps group, and I happened to be fortunate enough to do some side work for his company as a consultant at one time, and he was going to be moving out of state and needed to kind of pass the torch, so to speak. And I just asked the question, hey, who are you going to pass the torch to? And ended up being one of the people selected by default. And interestingly enough, the gentleman that's the co-leader with me, he's actually the one that founded the group. It was either in 2008 or 2009. And, he got busy for a while and didn't want to do the coordination thing. And so now he's back to helping out with that. So a lot of times we'll exchange ideas on, what vendor would we like to talk to? What topic do people think is something useful? Who could we ask to or encourage to maybe give a talk at a Spice Corps? Because when you're leading one of these groups, one of your or at least I consider it one of my action items, is to look at the members and, I talk to them for useful things in my professional growth. What are they doing to learn about technology? But I'm also looking for, hey, why don't you give a talk about that? That sounds like something that would be really good. I remember this guy telling me that he had moved his entire environment to AWS, and this was probably 2 years ago. And I said, that would be a great topic because I know nothing about it. And he talked about the challenges and what he would have done differently, and it was just really incredibly useful, I thought.
So, as a leader, now I'm going to pick your leader brain.
Sure.
So, say I'm Joe user out there in IT community land, and I want to start a meetup, maybe a Spice Core, maybe a VMUG, or just a simple meetup and discuss technology. When you're trying to get people to actually, like you said, convince people that they've got something worthwhile to say, what's been successful in getting people to actually come up and speak?
I think the first thing is you need to get to know the people at the meetings, and that you're going to have some people that come to every meeting, and you're going to have some new people each time probably, and maybe some people who haven't been there in a while. Now, at least in our area, the VMUGs are probably about 100 people. So you have this vast group of people that you might be able to talk to or pick from. It seems like it's a bit more intimate with SpiceCore. We don't have as many people. I wish we had more, but I try to get to know the people, whether they're new or old. What are you doing? What are you working on? Hey, have you ever thought about giving a talk on this, even if it's just 10 or 15 minutes? Because that's really interesting to me, and I'm guessing that if it's interesting to me, it's going to be interesting to somebody else. And you if you would like some professional development, because that's really what it is, right? When one of us gets up there and gives a talk, nobody's necessarily up there judging you or this guy got it wrong. We want to hear what you have to say, and we'll give you a critique whether it was good or bad, but ultimately we want to know what you know, and so that we can grow too. And so I'm kind of always on the lookout now after experiencing this meetup and organizational process, always on the lookout for people who might be able to provide some good content.
And you mentioned that you've got vendors that will either sponsor some food and speak for a little bit. What's it like to work with the vendors? How is it to actually kind of generate the funds, the sponsorships for these events? Are there certain, and you don't have to name names, are there vendors that are great to work with and others not so much? What have you seen?
Well, in my experience, for the most part, we've had good experiences. Now, you go to a conference like Spice World or maybe even VMworld, and they have a ton of sponsors. And so a lot of times I'll go to these conferences. This will actually be my first year at VMworld, so I can't say I've done it there, but at Spice World, I've been the last few times, and I'll go talk to all the vendors and learn about their product and say, hey, have you ever thought about sponsoring a Spice Core? And a lot of them don't know what SpiceCore is. So part of my job is to educate them on what it is and say, hey, I think you have a neat product here. I'd like to give you an audience to reach more people with this, and then we normally have a conversation about, okay, here's what I'm giving you, and here's what I want you to give me and the people that are coming. I want you to give me technical content, not a sales pitch. Here are some examples of what that looks like. And we would like food and beverage and things like, if you want the contact information from people who are attending these meetings, then you need to have an opt-in giveaway. That's a rule that SpiceCore or SpiceWorks actually implemented, and it's actually a very good one to prevent unnecessary spammed messages for people that come. And in the SpiceWorks community, at least, I'm not sure if it's like this in the VMware community, but they have special marketer accounts in there, and vendors can pay for those, and they can be recognized in the community as a marketer. So they can look you up and see that you're a member of this group and you're leading the group, and a lot of times they'll come to me. But if it's a product I know about and I'm interested in, or I think other people would be interested in, I'll go to them and ask. And most of them are very interested. They may not necessarily have the budget in their marketing budget at the time, but I don't think I've ever had anybody tell me, no, we're completely uninterested. That's a dumb idea. So I'd say for the most part, it's been very good working with the vendors and learning about how their marketing departments work, how their strategies work. And I'll tell you, what I like to do, because the job before this one, I was a sysadmin, and I still am, but I was also in charge of all the vendor relationships. So when I'd hear about a new product or vendor that I knew I wasn't going to buy, my goal would be to say no and then sell them on Spice Core sponsorship. Kind of like a little game I'd play.
So, with your meetings, where do you host them typically? What's it like to work with host sites? Do you have to pay? Do you find places that are more than willing to provide a facility for free? What does that look like?
That's something that seems to always be difficult for our group in particular. Normally, we ask the vendor to help us find somewhere to host. We've had meetings at, a vendor's customer location in our area where they were talking about a particular technology. We've had meetings at main events. We've had them at Dave and Buster's. We did one where we toured a data center, which was really cool in the area, QTS. That was a great meeting. A lot of people enjoyed that. And we have a couple members who are members of the Makerspace in Dallas, and they can get us a free area to do presentations and host the meetings. And sometimes you can get a library, something like that. But I will tell you, I think it's more difficult for us to find a place to meet than it is to get a vendor. And this seems to always be the struggle. Sometimes it's somebody's conference room that their company is okay with them using for the evening. So I always try to get the vendor to help out with finding a venue, because if you're going somewhere like a bowling alley or a Dave and Buster's, they're going to charge you some sort of fee to have their banquet room, because they could be giving it to someone else and getting their money during that time. But we've definitely had some informal meetings just at the Dallas Makerspace that didn't cost anybody anything to go, and there was no vendor sponsor. It was just user presentations, and it was definitely good stuff.
Yeah, with the VMUGs, they've been around for a while, and at least in the Wisconsin area, it seems like the chapters have a pretty good relationship with a lot of the local technical schools and the colleges. We'll get a lot of our regional meetings, our quarterly meetings at Milwaukee area technical college, Fox Valley Technical College, which is nearish Green Bay, Appleton area.
Okay.
But the big day long big conferences are in fact at like a conference center, which has to be paid for. But that comes the sponsorship money and the VMUG corporate. There's a fund that's you get a budget to plan your meeting and whatnot, and it's it helps to pay for the site as well. What I have seen around here, at least, again, it's my experience just around here, is a lot of the smaller groups, especially there's an AWS group that's out of Milwaukee now, and they seem to have found one corporation that seems to work with them quite a bit, and they get a big conference room, or like I'm pretty sure the one picture looked like a lecture hall right in the heart of downtown Milwaukee, and then they can just host everybody a couple hours. I don't know if that's something they pay for. I feel like it's, hey, this is going to benefit all of us because we're encouraging technological growth and we're getting our face out there. We can see who's coming into these meetings if that's somebody we want to talk to for our own department. But that's something worth looking at as well. Yeah, I had a vendor do a training class at what was pretty much like a local chain pub and grill in a back room,
Hmm.
and which was cool from 7 a.m. until 11. But once they opened at 11, it was so noisy, and we had to move to a whole different part of the building so we could actually hear the training. So Dave and Buster's, I've done an event at a Dave and Buster's. I'm not a fan. But if you can get those academic environments or those corporate environments, I think that's pretty huge with being able to provide a good environment for learning and communicating and networking.
That's a good idea about the local colleges. I can't believe that we've never even talked about doing that. I appreciate that one. I have to look into that.
Yeah, no problem. And I can't even take credit for that. One of the VMUG leaders here out of Wisconsin, or steering committee members, is actually a professor at one of the technical colleges. So he got the group in where he teaches and encourages a lot of his students to go. That was actually my first experience, was a VMUG meeting before I even graduated. And I was like, oh, this is some
Oh
cool
wow.
technology. Like, this is some cool stuff. And that actually helped to steer my career a little bit away from just like generalist to more of a data center virtualization guy.
That's cool. Yeah, we had a a guy come to our last meeting a couple weeks ago, and he was a student, and he was asking me all kinds of questions, and I told him, I said, hey man, I'm sure there's something interesting that you're working on. You know, if you're working at the computer lab at your school, if you want, we'll let you present something. I'm sure there's something cool that you can teach us that we don't know, because we sure don't know everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just encouraging those who are still in school and those who are still learning or early in their careers to be involved and to come to these meetings, to talk to the vendors. It opens up new, I don't know if I would say horizons, but it exposes people to new technologies. And yeah, they're in school now, but in 3, 5 years, they could be working for you, or they could be in a position that, hey, I saw this technology when I was at this VMUG meeting. It was a couple years ago, but let's look into this. You plant the seeds a little bit with that, and it helps like your product grow. It helps your message get out there, and it builds that goodwill, like being open to having those who aren't professionals yet,
Oh,
talking with them
sure.
and helping them learn. Like it's I've seen it in action, and I've seen it work, and I've also seen vendors be not so happy or get a little snarky about it's the sales and the marketing. You got to make your numbers. You got to find your leads, and that I understand. We all answer to the business. We do our
Right.
things so the business can succeed. But every once in a while, you just got to tone that down a little bit and help the community and help others.
Yeah, and you never know when you might be working for that vendor that sponsored your meeting. You might really hit it off with them and be interested in their product, and they might like you, and who knows? That could be your next gig.
Absolutely. That's actually you commented in the email about my post about my from CNC to VCP or NTC post on my blog from a few weeks back. And that's what happened. I saw, a VMUG presentation when I was in school, started a blog, interviewed one of their employees, and I stayed in, social media contact with that person. And then when I needed a job, he's like, hey, I've, followed you for a few years. Would you like to join us? Well, I like getting paid. So,
Yeah,
and it's proven to be a really good company. So again, like both ways, involvement in like, when you're developing as well as involvement from the vendors and the sponsors towards those who are developing. It's a two-way street.
yeah, completely agree. And you'll hear a lot of people say that you need to be prepared to give a whole lot more than you're going to get, but it does come back to you for sure.
Absolutely. So with your meetings, how do you come up with topics, or is it kind of like a cycle, or does Spiceworks kind of give ideas like, oh, this quarter we've seen a lot of this, and what are some of the more unorthodox ideas you've had for your meeting topics?
Well, I like to talk to the members, maybe after the meeting's over, hey, what would you like to hear about? Sometimes we'll send out a poll because we can do that through the community. Everybody can follow the group in the Spiceworks community so that when we post a new meeting, they can RSVP to it and gives us an idea of how many people are going to come. But we'll poll our members. We'll also think about, okay, well, we've had these kind of vendors within the last year. We don't want to have those same kinds of vendors and products again because people may just not want to hear that. So we try to stay on top of what's trending, what people are interested in, what may be a hot topic within the Spiceworks community itself, something that's getting a lot of traffic and activity. But as for unorthodox, we've had meetings in people's houses where we did a video conference with some people from New York, and we had a joint meeting with the New York Spice Corps and our Dallas Fort Worth Spice Corps, and one of the guys gave a talk, and it was very successful. We had one a couple months ago at the Dallas Makerspace, and I didn't really have a specific topic in mind, so I just started asking questions. What does somebody want to share a cool project you're working on? And so the conversation starts, and man, once these people start talking, it just keeps going. And so then I would, maybe ask a different question. What are you doing for your career? What are you excited about? What technology do you think is going to be the next hottest thing? And that conversation, even though we cut it off after 2 hours, it probably could have gone 4. We'd have just sat there and kept nerding out for hours. But that was a really good one, and it wasn't sponsored. We just sat there and talked about IT. It was really, really cool.
So, has the involvement in Spice Corps helped you grow, or how about any of your members? Are there any success stories that have come from people coming to meetings and learning something new?
I know, I mentioned the one where we watched a guy's presentation on Wi-Fi, and after that, and talking to him, we went back and fixed the Wi-Fi at our manufacturing plant. And we were having some big issues. It turned out we just had the access points too close together. But that was a good one. I know that I often overhear people talking about they're looking for a job, or somebody is looking for someone to fill a spot at their company. So a lot of times there'll be that exchange of information. Hey, we're looking to hire somebody. If you're interested, come talk to me. And I know some of that's happened, but I can't state a particular case for you, unfortunately. I will say for me, it's really helped me practice talking in front of people. I'm no expert by any means, but I go up there and try to start the meeting, and we have an icebreaker. Everybody tells a little bit about themselves. And so I feel like that's helped me in talking to my peers, maybe at work or teaching a class at church, whatever that entails. It's definitely helped. And the communication with the vendors, it's really helped me understand a lot more about the business world and how things work. Coming from education, I didn't really know that much about business at all. I didn't take business courses in school.
Yeah, I found in my career having that ability to communicate with highly technical people, people who are, not so technical, with the business, the C-level executives, the vice presidents, even the just management. That communication skill, those soft skills that are kind of lacking in a lot of people in IT, that has been huge. And I will say I don't get nervous, or it's not that I don't get nervous before getting up and speaking at a meeting or even in front of a client. I just did a conference a couple of months ago where my session was actually recorded for a webinar.
Oh, nice.
Little unnerving beforehand,
Yeah.
but you keep doing it. You keep doing it. People aren't out there to judge you. They're not out there to make fun of you and wait for you to mess up. They want to hear what you have to say. They want to learn from what you've got to say. So it's continuing to talk and continuing to speak, and even like I've seen people who are just like, yeah, I've just become a VMUG leader, and now I'm terrified, but I'm gonna start by just doing the MC work at our UserCon. I'm just gonna introduce people, and like that's all I'm gonna get up and speak. But helping yourself grow and developing that soft skill, that's gonna open a lot of doors for anybody in their career.
Oh, yeah. Seems like, or maybe I just haven't been listening to podcasts that long, but you listen to your podcast, you listen to the Geek Whisperers, you listen to the Data Knots, and they all talk about you need to be able to communicate to the lowest level person in the organization and the highest level person in the organization. And it's true at those Spice Corps meetings or the VMUG meetings as well. You're going to meet people that are just starting out, and you can't talk to them about fiber channel over Ethernet in a meaningful way, but you could probably give them a high level overview of what somebody else might be talking about in a couple paragraphs, a couple few seconds of conversation. But that communication is an invaluable skill.
Absolutely, and those user meetups, they're a great place to go and learn to start your career. When you
Oh, yeah.
want, that's what it's all about, is people coming together to learn and to teach. And I recall a VMUG meeting where somebody had a question about why their ESX upgrade failed, and they did it in reverse order, and they didn't know that you had to do your vCenter first. They did the hosts first, and
Ooh.
which, it was a smaller environment, so it's, wasn't the end of the world. Their hosts were still up. They just lost connectivity to the vCenter. But, everyone's like, no, this is the way you got to do it. And, like, if you give me your email address, I'll send you the KB and, like, what you got to look at. And
Mm-hmm.
that's why you're there. You're there to learn. You're there to help. We're not going to sit back and point and laugh, go, you idiot, why didn't you read the KB? Like, that's
Right.
not community. That's not why we go there.
And it's really interesting to talk to those people who are doing the things that you might be interested in doing. You know what I mean? You're not there yet, but so and so is working for VMware, or they just got a new job as a systems engineer for this company. What do you do every day? And tell me about how you got there. What steps did you take, and why did you want to do that? I love picking people's brains in that regard, and maybe I've just become better at it since becoming a leader. But I find it fascinating to talk about how people got to where they are. Like the blog post you wrote, from CNC to VCP, that was very fascinating to me. Very cool story.
Well, thank you. It was it was a rough one to live out. It was a lot of work, but
Sounded like it.
I've so the reason I decided to write that blog post was our company participates in like a technology day with a few larger corporations around the Milwaukee area, and it's meant to help inspire at-risk middle school youths, say, I really want to be in technology, kind of help give them some little bit motivation. And so I was telling people, I'm like, yeah, I went to work right out of school. I was making good money. And then I realized it wasn't good money, and I told the story over and over again. And we had I'm probably gonna get made fun of for not remembering exactly what it's called. It's one of our Cisco telepresence devices we were demonstrating, and kids were talking to people over video with people in our office. And the guy who was sitting there listening to me tell the story over and over again, he's like, it was a pretty interesting story. So I thought, well, maybe it's got value to somebody else out there. And when I gave that session at that conference, somebody came right up afterwards and said, you know what, I'm going to start doing these things. And, we stayed in touch, and they're on Twitter now. They're on social media, and they're, I was like, I blogged once or twice. I don't know what to do. It's like, just keep blogging. You'll come, just keep contributing, keep generating content, and even if it's for yourself. So everyone, everyone's stories, everyone's got something to share out there.
Oh yeah, so true. But getting people to understand and believe that they have something to share, even if it's somewhat similar to something that's already been done, they might have a totally different spin on why they did it or how they did it or what not to do.
Oh, absolutely. One of the questions I was asked recently is, well, why, if I come up with this blog idea, but I see 19 other people have done it, why should I write this blog? And exactly that. You've got your own perspective. Not everybody's environment is the same. You might do X, Y, and Z, but it's going to throw something else off. Share what you've seen. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of people who have the exact same experience, but not everyone's is going to be your experience.
Yep.
Getting your voice out there and getting what you've seen out there is, I think is important.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Because it helps you learn things better. Once you, again, back to the communication thing we were saying, you go and blog about something that you've done, you kind of feel this pressure. Well, I better understand what I'm writing down here, and a little bit more about why it broke than maybe when I got the idea for writing this.
Yeah. And quick points for anybody listening who's thinking about speaking. First of all, it's very okay to say, I don't know. There's been plenty of times in business meetings or presenting at VMUGs, I will say outright, like, you know what? I don't know. I'll ask the room if somebody knows, and hopefully somebody does, and we can get that answered right away. But then we'll exchange contact information. Like, let me look into that. I'll reach back out to you, or do you follow me on Twitter? Like, we can chat. And the other thing is, imposter syndrome is huge, and it's real, and everybody suffers from it. The most terrifying words I ever speak at any session is, any questions? Because then I'm away from all of my rehearsed answers and everything I know to a T. It's when, oh, great, they get to actually see if I know this. You're not going to know every answer. Nobody in that room knows every answer. I do, like I said previously, I do the community sessions. I make sure to point that out. Like, we are a community. I'm the only one and I say this, I'm the only sucker who's willing to get up here and tell my story. So if I say something wrong, correct me. If I'll reach out to the audience. If somebody knows, I'm not certain, anybody here know, do not hesitate to raise your hand. We're all the same people here. We're all just a big group of IT professionals. Let's help each other out.
Yeah, and what separates what could separate you from the rest of the pack is you could really make an impact on somebody just in general by them asking you a question, you saying you don't know, but hey, I'll get back to you, and then actually doing it.
Right.
It's one thing to say I'll get back to you, but it's something totally different to actually follow through it. Hey man, I appreciate your question. It took me a couple weeks to get back to it, but here's the answer I found. What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And through trying to encourage others to speak, I've actually made some friendships. I've made met people from around the state, around the country. So you're also getting out there and you're building a network.
Oh
You're
yeah,
building a professional network. You're making friends. I've got a few people that I would consider real good friends through VMUGs, through going to these conferences. They're great experiences. So outside of just the technical stuff, it's great socialization, great group of people.
definitely.
So back to the topic at hand with the Spice Core, or actually in your professional life, do you have any interesting products coming up in the future, or projects, not products? Any interesting projects coming up? What are you doing with Spice Core? What are your meetings looking like coming up?
We actually just had a Spice Core meeting with a company called Arctic Wolf. With all the WannaCry and Petya, I think that's how you pronounce it, ransomware out there. You people are getting a little antsy, maybe a little scared. It might be time to strike while the iron's hot on for some of these business leaders because they don't always want to invest in security, and it kind of can become this black hole cost center because they don't always know how much security they need or don't need. But what Arctic Wolf actually does is they do security as a service. So they are, quarterbacking your security team that you may not have if you're a small shop. They're watching traffic, watching for intrusion attempts, and watching for malware, things that maybe your antivirus or gateway device haven't caught. And they're alerting you and kind of helping you hone in on what you should be thinking about and doing to make your security posture stronger. You don't want to be looking through alerts in your intrusion detection system all day when you only have 2 people or 3 people. That's an impossible chore. So really cool product. I actually had the chance to beta test that one several years ago, so it was neat to have them come and sponsor. And that was one of those vendors where I went to them and said, "Hey, I really like your product, and I really think that right now it's a great time for you to put this in front of these user groups." And as soon as the meeting was over, they wanted to know if I could put them in contact with other user groups in different areas. Absolutely. You know, go for it. Here are the people I know, and go talk to them, and I'm sure they'd be interested in having you guys buy them food and telling them about how you can help them solve security issues. It was it was really cool. And a lot of people came, and a lot of people seemed to really enjoy what those folks had to say because we just sat there and picked their brains, and they loved it. The guys that came from Arctic Wolf loved every minute of it. And you asked about projects, so things that I'm working on. We actually had a situation in my environment where when I came to this position, we had the boss had purchased a SAN and some servers, the 3-2-1 type scenario, and we were going to have multiple locations and replicate SANs, all this good stuff, but we wanted to have encryption on the SAN, and we got self-encrypting drives in the SAN, and we had some cache drives. Well, the vendor had sent us drives that were not self-encrypting for the cache. And the non-self-encrypting drives that we got for the cache actually wouldn't work with everything else we had. So we actually made a really big change, and we went down the path of vSAN. So we got new hosts, and we put in a vSAN cluster, and we are using HITRUST with VM encryption to actually encrypt most of our virtual machines. And it's really neat to be a part of that implementation because, I went from a place that was vSphere Essentials, okay, with local storage, to a place that's vSphere Enterprise Plus with vSAN and encryption. Just a lot of opportunities to learn, and I got to go through this and implement the encryption utility, which is HITRUST. And what's even cooler than that is it gave me a VMware hackathon idea. So there's still some open spots on my hackathon team if anybody wants to join.
Now, you also mentioned that Spice World is coming up in October. Are you doing anything with that?
Yes, actually, I am doing a session on the IT manager's guide to shadow IT prevention. So maybe some tips and tricks that you can use for someone in the small shop or maybe not a small shop to leverage technologies or certain policies and procedures to stomp out shadow IT, not only from the users, but also the kind of shadow IT that gets your management team to go around you. So maybe some communication strategies from you up to the top. I think it'll be fun. I think it'll be interesting. Hopefully it'll be helpful to people that come.
Yeah, that does sound like a good topic. And as you're going to be at VMworld, there may still be a slot or two out there for the community sessions, for the vBrownBag community sessions. If you can hang out, they could probably squeeze you in. Just going to throw that out there.
Well, now that you mentioned it, I actually managed to sneak in one.
Oh,
So
excellent.
I submitted right before the deadline, and they told me, it had filled up, and then I got an email from Alistair Cook said, we have 6 spots. So I jumped on it. My session's going to be if vSAN powered the matrix. So tips and tricks for planning your vSAN implementation as if it powered the matrix and without breaking your budget.
Interesting.
So it should be fun.
Yeah, that sounds like it. I'll have to be sure to catch that one.
You're doing one too, right?
I'm doing 2 actually.
Okay.
I'm doing a shortened version of my 2 free tools session that I've been doing at the VMUGs lately, and I'm doing a I wouldn't say significantly, it's only about 13 minutes shortened, from CNC to VCP session. I'll be doing that one as well. So
That's
one's,
awesome.
yeah, so a good technical session on tools and a nice career development session. So I've gotten good feedback on both, so it should be good. I'm excited for those.
I'll have to come out and see. Sounds great.
And I will say, unless some kind of crazy miracle happens, I don't think this episode is going to be up until after VMworld, so I hope those who are listening got a chance to go and enjoy. Well, sir, we're getting near our allotted time here, so where can people find you online? Do you do the Twitters, do you blog, etc.? Where can we find you?
So this all started in the Spiceworks community, so I just came up with this name one day, Network Nerd. It doesn't necessarily mean that I know that much about networking. It was just a cool name. So I try to get that on Twitter, but it's actually at Network Nerd and then with an underscore at the end. And then I have a blog that I try to post to occasionally, just started this year, blog.thenetworknerd.com. And I'm also in the Spiceworks community as username Network Nerd.
Good deal. I will be sure to include links to all of that in the show notes at ExploreVM.com.
Cool.
So, well, Nick, I want to thank you for your time. I think this has been a good episode, very informative.
Thanks very much, Paul, for having me. I appreciate it. Good talk.
And thank you for listening. As anticipated, this episode is up after VMworld, so I've posted the links to the videos of both Nick and my vBrownBag Tech Talks to the show notes. You can also find them by searching the vBrownBag YouTube channel for this year's Tech Talks. And as always, if you have a show idea or to be a guest on the ExploreVM podcast, contact me on Twitter at ExploreVM, Facebook.com/ExploreVM, or email me, paul@ExploreVM.com. Once again, thank you for listening.